professional musician, the fundamental aspects of getting better at what you do is something that you're passionate about. And so taking that journey and going forward is something that'll be really important. I would lump in composition with that. I would lump in education with that. I would lump in anything that is going to make you a better overall musician with that. Because at the end of the day, if you're only focusing on one skill, you become expendable and replaceable. And as musicians, that's the last thing we want to do.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Marcus Grant. Marcus, well, he's a go-getter. In addition to his career as a player and composer, Marcus is also a professor of music theory and aural skills at Virginia Commonwealth University, the co-founder and director of the Trumpeter's Multitrack competition and seminar, vice president of Diversify the Stand, and a member of the executive board of the National Trumpet Competition. Well, good thing he loves what he does. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, and it is time for yet another exciting episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I am joined this time by Mr. Marcus Grant. Marcus, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, pleasure's all mine. You are a busy dude. I mean,
you could say that.
Yeah, I look at the things that you're involved in currently, and there's so many things, and I don't even know where to start with some of them. But I'll start with this question first, because I love putting people on the spot first thing. You have studied with some very great players. I
have
two in particular, Rex Richardson, who I've had in the show, and Joey Tartell, who I've known for years and had on the show. So let's start with this question: who's the biggest jerk?
I don't know any jerks. I don't have any teachers who are jerks. Sorry to disappoint you. I know Rex and Joey have both been on this interview in the past, and I don't know. Maybe the listeners can make that decision as to who was the jerk. I've also had some other teachers along the way who worked with me for brief periods of time. My freshman year, Rex had Mary Bowden in as an adjunct professor who was just great, a wonderful teacher and player. Obviously she has gotten a lot more noticeable by the overall trumpet community over the past decade or so, but she's always been great. It wasn't one of those, like, she stepped into the limelight and things changed, and there was also Staff Sergeant Kevin Maloney, who helped prepare me actually that last year in VCU, headed to grad school at Indiana University. All great teachers and great people.
Yeah, they're great. I love both Rex and Joey, and I just love to bust Joey's chops. So any opportunity I get to throw Joey into the bus, I never.
Oh yeah, we and maybe some stories will come up in this interview. Who knows? We'll see.
Okay, we'll hold you to that. All right. So you like you said, you did your undergrad at VCU, and then did your grad work in Indiana, and so your trajectory. So you've had was your undergrad performance or ed?
I did my undergraduate in music education.
Okay. So you did the education undergrad, you did the performance masters, and so now you're on faculty at VCU, correct? You're teaching.
That's correct. Yep, I'm teaching music theory and aural skills currently at VCU.
Okay, yeah. So were you bitten more by the teaching bug or by the performance bug as you were coming into your own as a musician?
Sure. It was definitely the teaching bug. The moment I decided that I wanted to major in music, I wanted to be a music educator. And it was one of those things that the first time that I kind of decided that I wanted to pursue this for a living, I had seen it was actually by watching a high school marching band, a particular group that had been competing in Bands of America. Hickory High School, for those of you guys who are either familiar with the BOA or who live in Virginia and are familiar with those schools, we saw them when I was in high school compete at a competition. And a lot of bands sometimes would try to avoid them because, they're in a different league of their own. They competed in the national circuit, and we know, like, oh, if we see them, we're probably going to lose. But we ended up running into them at one point, and I had never seen them perform. And, I don't know, for whatever reason in my mind, I wanted to know how they did what they did, but then I also wanted to figure out how I could help other people do what they did. And so that kind of started things. And of course, I played the trumpet and I enjoyed the trumpet. But my love and desire for refining my skills on the trumpet actually came a little bit later. And for a while, it was my means of helping me to become a better educator. That if I was going to teach people to be great musicians, then I would need to expect myself to be a great musician as well. It wouldn't really work any other way. And that was kind of how I thought about it in my mind. But I have to say, by the time I finished my undergrad, I started to realize just how passionate about trumpet I was. And so certainly studying trumpet performance at IU, I was able to learn a lot of things and grow quite a bit. And a lot of that growth was enjoyment for the instrument itself.
Yeah. Well, there certainly has to be a level of passion that's involved with it. And, and I brought up the Rex and Joey, and then now you talked about Mary Elizabeth, and you've had the opportunity to study with some people that I've had some really great conversations about pedagogy with, and I think that are maybe some of the most creative thinkers in terms of the way trumpet should be taught now. Certainly Arbin's had his, had the corner market, in his day, but
yeah,
the demands of the modern trumpet player, I don't think you could not pick three better people that can help you to not just prepare for a career today, but for the next several decades as music will continue to change. So what are some of the things that maybe stuck out with your experience with them that kind of sparked your interest in pedagogy even more, and maybe having influenced you in ways that you really didn't expect?
Sure. I have sort of a rounded answer to that question, because I think it's easy to talk about technique and about those types of things, like, this person had an incredible sound, or this person, has an incredible technical prowess. And of course, all of these things are true. But when I went into college and started studying with these individuals, I kind of assumed in my mind that professionals were just kind of built differently, and they see the world differently from everyone else. And in a way, they kind of are. But in a way, they're also incredibly kind and down to earth and approachable. And so in my mind, I kind of came in with this idea that, I had this insurmountable ladder to climb as an individual to becoming a professional. And what I really learned, and it really started with Rex, and it was kind of held true as I continued to meet more people, and especially as I continued to study with individuals, is the passion and desire to practice intentionally, to make connections genuinely, and to go through that process. That's really the big secret to becoming a professional trumpet player. And then these days, being really great at the trumpet is required. But it's almost, it's a bare minimum type of thing. The reality is there are thousands and thousands of great trumpet players out there. And unless you yourself are a professional musician, some of the nuances that make someone more proficient than someone else might not necessarily be noticed. But what will be noticed is how well you work and interact with other people. And, do you show up to the gigs on time? Are you a joy to work with? How adaptable are you when things go in ways that aren't expected, and those types of things. And I would even add, maybe we're headed into there in the future part of this interview, but as I started to get more into the quote unquote mainstream area and side of things, started posting things up on YouTube and TikTok, et cetera, that became just massively, increasingly apparent. And it was something I was really grateful that I learned from my teachers.
Yeah. Well, and actually that is a good segue into that, because social media has become, it's part of our reality. It's not going away. If anything, it's just going to become more pervasive. And, the old ways of getting noticed as a performer, or to get your works out to the public, that's changed. And not everybody always embraces change, and not all changes.
Yeah.
So how have you navigated this landscape of social media and digital content as a performer and also as a composer?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it is. I mean, social media moves and progresses very quickly. It's one of those things. I mean, it's true today more than ever. By the time you start college, there's a certain number of jobs and opportunities available, and by the time you graduate, it may have entirely turned on its head. Just because of how quickly things move. And social media has kind of jump-started and kick-started that momentum, and things are moving a lot more quickly and changing a lot more quickly. I like to refer to social media as a venue for musicians, and we think about, I don't want to call it the old way, because it's still incredibly viable, and it's alive and active and an essential way of running a career. But if you're an international touring artist and you got, and maybe you're sponsored by, a company. Rex is sponsored by Yamaha. So I like using that example a lot. Rex would tour all the time, and he's probably going to get back into it. Obviously, COVID made things really difficult for us to go out and traveling. But I remember him traveling, 180 days out of the year, and he always had time for his students, which was just a remarkable, if you had a question, you could answer it if you needed help, which was great. But he was out there, and he was playing, in Brazil, and then he was playing, in England, and he would travel everywhere. And every time he performs, there's an audience of individuals who watch him, who admire him, who want to know more about him after that experience, and his notoriety kind of grows within that community. And then it grows in the next community where he goes, and then it grows in the next community, and people ask him back, and then he gets invited to larger events and whatnot. And that happens over the course of a few years. You can start to build a really big notoriety. The blessing and curse with social media is that it is possible for you to gain for awareness of your existence as a musician, your merit as a musician, your ideals to be pushed out. All of those things are possible rather than within a few years, within a weekend, and sometimes within a few hours. All it takes is putting up a video that happens to get picked up by the algorithm, or your audience tends to be really passionate about whatever they see. And you could go from nobody knowing who you are to having millions of views, and everyone wants to know more about who you are. And I say it's a blessing and a curse, because the curse side of things is oftentimes we grow and we develop with our audience. And sometimes in social media, your audience might grow faster than you're growing. And you kind of have to catch up, and you have to be able to understand, one, what your audience wants, and two, if it's the right audience for you, if it's your ideal audience. But then of course it's a blessing, because it means it takes a lot of the time, of the money, of a lot of that side of things out of the equation that maybe was required beforehand when it comes to meeting new people, when it comes to building your career. And your career can be built on autopilot. If you post a video up on YouTube, you're going to get views, at 8 a.m., at 11 a.m., at 2 p.m., but you're also going to get those views at 11 p.m., at 3 a.m. And it's not specific to one particular performance. It would be like if you were an international touring artist, but you cloned yourself and you went to 100 or 200 or 4,000 different communities and performed all at the same time. So it's a really great and powerful thing. What I will say is that I've been very careful with how I present myself on social media, because I know once I put it up, it's going to be up there for good, And when I say careful, of course, sometimes I'm really silly on social media. I'll show a lot of my personality, et cetera. But, I kind of want to ask myself, if Rex saw a video of mine, would he be proud of me, right? Would he want to, align his brand with mine? If Joey saw something that I put up, if an employer saw something I was putting up, if VCU wanted to hire me, which they did for a position, would they be deterred by my presence on social media, or would it encourage them? And so just a bunch of important things to think about and realize at the end of the day, the core side of things, the basic principles of networking that we're taught, and that at least that we were taught in college before things like TikTok, for example, came up just about 4 or 5 years ago. Those basic principles are still applicable, but you kind of have to put them in hyperdrive, and if you mess up, you might mess up in front of an audience of 2 million. So you just got to be careful. And that's how social media works. If you put something up that maybe you step out of line, for example, things that get traction, they don't necessarily get traction because of the high quality presentation. They get traction because it's engaging and it's by definition remarkable, meaning someone can remark on it. And remarkable doesn't always mean good. So if you do something crazy or controversial, and you've posted maybe 100 other videos, that crazy controversial thing is the one that's going to gain the most traction, because people are going to have things to remark on. So it's just a matter of understanding, your business and your brand as a musician, and just being very careful that every time you post something up, you're doing a good job with that.
Yeah. Well, the world has changed so much over my lifetime, but I remember when I was younger, one of my music teachers saying, in terms of like recording, like doing any kind of project, this is back in the days of LPs and that sort of stuff. So never record a song that you don't love, because it's almost guaranteed that will be the one that becomes the most popular and everybody wants to hear. So
absolutely.
Make sure that everything you do has, it's something that you enjoy and that you will be happy to do for the rest of your life. And I'm a big believer in, always putting your best foot forward, not being fake about it, but understanding that, like the old saying, first impressions are lasting. That you, with social media, you're constantly making these impacts and these impressions on people. And you just never know who's going to watch something. And especially, I tell kids all the time, think about the stuff that you're putting up. Yeah, it's fun, it's goofy, but, is this really how you want to be remembered, 5 years or 10 years from now, or when your next potential employer is looking into you, because everybody is doing that now. Are you presenting yourself as being the kind of person that you truly want to be? So, it's a whole different landscape there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but with the advantages that we have is, we're saying that you can get out in front of people, you can get your content in front of people that would maybe never see you or hear you before. And one of the projects that you've been involved with, which I really found fascinating and enjoyed, is the Multitrack competition. So how did that come about? And, where do you see that kind of in the pantheon of trumpet opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with regard to TMTC. I know we've had the pleasure of having my good friend David Cook here, and we also had last season's winner Cameron was here, and both great interviews. And it's been really cool to see how the competition and the seminar both have affected our trumpet community, even in the 2 short years that we've been present. Funny enough, it kind of started as so David had been posting things up on social media. Brandon had been posting up videos on social media, and I had been posting videos up on social media. David and I had met actually in person when we were in college. We both went to a seminar together, but Brandon and I actually to this day have never met in person. But we have become pretty good friends, and I've been able to talk about a lot of the commonalities we have, especially through social media. But we got together at one point during lockdown. We got out on a Zoom call and was like, oh, we should, to keep our chops up, to continue playing. We would put up videos. We're like, we should put a collab. It'd be really cool to put a trumpet, trio together. But as we started talking, the three of us realized just how much passion we have for the art of music and presenting it in a genuine and effective manner online. And it kind of morphed into this desire to move forward with a competition that would allow others to have the opportunity to do those same things, and would encourage and promote others to do those same things. And of course, as trumpet players, we are, if we are experts in anything, it's the trumpet community itself. So we wanted to keep it at an area that we could know that we could do a really great job on. So we put it together after it was maybe a 2.5-hour meeting of us just talking. And funny thing is, we never actually ended up putting together that collab. In fact, the only one that we have done to this point, it was months later, and we did a trio arrangement of Let It Go from Frozen, and that's actually on my YouTube channel. I say trio arrangement. There were what really was, it was a trumpet ensemble arrangement, and I kind of did all the interior parts. David did the bass trumpet part, and Brandon did the piccolo trumpet part, which is really great. So we eventually got our one collab in, but what we really got in was a competition in which we're able to serve our trumpet community in a way that's relevant to what they are doing today and what they need to do in the future. So it really just came about as that passion. And we're kind of looking at this thing. It's like we mentioned, the world changes rapidly, and we want to make sure that we're always progressing and moving forward with the current events and with the with everything that's going on in the world, in our careers, in social media, et cetera, because that's the platform from which we're on. But regardless of how things progress, we're just trying to bridge the gap between the professional musicians and the rest of the world. Oftentimes as a trumpet player, if you go and you study for a certain amount of years in college, for example, and you go out and say you get an orchestra gig, the lion's share of the world, of the community, is going to have no idea what you've been through, and have no idea what it takes to do what you do, and won't be able to understand a big part of that. And being able to engage in something, and a lot of them won't know what you're capable of either, what you've been asked to do, what the experiences that you've had through that process. So one of the benefits of being able to have a competition like the Multitrack competition, where anyone can watch it at any time, you can skip to any part of a video and see anything, is we have the opportunity to kind of put our best foot forward and to show that in front of everyone, not just our fellow trumpet geeks, but also in front of our families, in front of our loved ones, in front of individuals who we maybe met in middle school or in high school, and they really want to, okay, what do you really do? Because people, we get asked that question all the time. It's like, you play trumpet for a living? Tell me how that's possible, right? And it's a lot easier to show rather than to tell. So TMTC is really kind of working on building a community that allows individuals to be able to express themselves in that manner. And a big part of that, because we have this high accessibility to an audience that may never go to orchestra concerts, that might never see a military band, and that type of thing, we are also encouraging those who participate in multi-tracking to do things that are native to the platform that they're a part of, that are indicative of the type of audience that's on that platform. So sometimes it's Mahler, but sometimes it's pentatonics. And if as a musician, we're able to perform in such a way that audiences are able to enjoy it no matter what it is, then we've gone really far in our career, So it's a hard and lofty goal unless you're putting yourself in that position. And TMTC kind of, we work to try to give people the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. And, in terms of the virtual nature of things, like even this podcast, my original idea when I was doing this was that it was going to be me going to, ITG or NTC or, some seminar somewhere and just hanging and talking with people and kind of putting it together there. And then COVID happened. And so I suddenly find myself, well, I really can't do that. But the advantage of it was, well, one, everybody was available because, we're all sitting around waiting for something to do. But the important thing is that it removed the restrictions of time and space that, I can schedule an interview with you today. I could schedule an interview later this afternoon if I wanted to, if they were available, with someone in London or in Australia or in China. I'm not restricted by the time, the space, and also the money, because let's face it, it's expensive to travel. And for a lot of people, I think in terms of particularly college students and, people that are starting their career, it's difficult to justify, even though it is a career investment, it's sometimes difficult to justify the cost that's involved with going to these more traditional competitions and showcases and things like that. Nothing against the tried and true established ones, but that's just a reality. In my martial arts career, that was always the problem, is that I would have to travel all over the world basically to go to competitions. And it was, thank God back then it was, I could fly to the West Coast for under $200. Now that's not possible.
No.
So you add the travel expenses, the registration expenses, room and board, food, blah, 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 all the sort of stuff that goes into it. I see something like, what you're doing as being such a great service, because it opens a door for people who would in many ways not have the opportunities to do what you're giving them this option to be able to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that was one of our big goals as well, just to be able to heighten the element of accessibility. And when we first started TMTC, we actually put it together with the premise that you can start this thing, you can do this with a computer, a cell phone, right? And you really still can, we're circling around a bit on kind of reminding people how that's possible and why you should care that that's possible, because it's true. Anytime you have to travel somewhere, there's travel expenses, there's lodging expenses, et cetera. And the reality is there are still more students, more individuals than people might realize that sometimes can't even afford to buy a new pair of shoes. And so how are they going to afford to travel to ITG? Maybe they want to travel to ITG. Maybe they want to travel to NTC. Maybe they want to travel to one of these areas where they're going to get that lifelong experience and build those connections and meet those people. But they just don't have the means to. And if they're not at a college that is able to or is willing to give them the money, funding to do that, then they're just kind of stuck. And, and it's just a shame. There's far too many musicians out there who, when given the opportunity, would be able to excel, to allow that to continue to be an issue. And so, that was kind of one of our big goals through TMTC, was to make it accessible to those individuals who either could never go to one of those events, or maybe you can't go to all of them all the time. I mean, even myself, I would love to go to every single trumpet event every year. But it's just, the reality is most musicians don't have that money. A lot of us, have that time because it's something that's really passionate for us. But I mean, if you go to every event, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars that are coming out of your pocket. And sometimes an annual salary's worth of money would cost just to go to those events. And it's just not reasonable or possible for many people.
And it's time and it's energy and there's lots of stuff going on with that. So what's on the horizon for season 3 of the competition?
That's a good question. There are some things that we are discussing as directors that maybe we're not quite ready to announce yet. But there are some things that, well, first of all, and for anyone who who didn't see the announcement at the end of season 2, we are taking a little bit of a short break. And what that short break entails is us just taking a little bit of time to spread out into the community. And like we were talking about before, giving more people, an accessible element of a voice. One of the things that we have been doing this past month was we started releasing out, we partnered with Diversify the Stand to do a call for scores for marginalized and underrepresented composers. And we had some really great submissions and have been putting out some videos to kind of represent their works. A lot of things like that we're going to see more of in the future. We're currently discussing how to best package the educational side of things, the seminar side of things of our competition in a way, again, that is accessible. So a lot of the things that we're doing and preparing for season 3 is giving those resources that are available. One of the things we realized, which is obviously there's always two sides to a coin, but when we, especially during season 2, when we had competitors submit entries, we see some great, phenomenal, creative musicians and producers put together some really high quality work. And even in season 2, we started getting a number of individuals who thought to themselves, well, I would love to apply and I would love to compete, but I just don't have the time to put together, videos of that quality while I'm doing all the other things that I'm doing, or, I don't know how to get started, or whatever the case may be. And so just being able to get people in a position where we can kind of bridge that gap between what they have seen from, our top 3, 4, 5, 6 finalists in previous seasons and what they're capable of doing. We're kind of putting a really big focus on that. So there will be some products, some classes, et cetera, that will be released in between now and the start of the 3rd season that will assist people in doing that. And what I can say about season 3 is that we are just working to make sure that our competition remains accessible to everyone. And anything that we can do that makes that possible is something that is that we discuss, something that's worth discussing as a group.
Oh, well, hopefully when you guys get this all ironed out, you will do it. You can do a big announcement on my show. How's that? We'll do that.
Absolutely. We can. Brandon hasn't come on yet, has he? So we can volunteer him.
that sounds awesome.
He can give you the announcements.
Yeah, that sounds great. And maybe you can actually, this is just my crazy mind at work. You guys should set this up almost like the Oscars, maybe without the slapping. But but
we don't need that.
Yeah, best production, best videography, best recording, best arrangement.
Absolutely.
Like all kinds of fun stuff going on. But we've been talking about the virtual. But as I talked about, like the more established, iconic physical events that have been going on for a while, you're really involved now with the National Trumpet Competition, which is kind of the more the traditional kind of idea that we see for a trumpet competition. So how did that come about, and what's your role in that, and how do you see the lessons that you've learned from doing so much virtual work spilling over also into how you can help to shape what's going on with NTC?
Sure. I love that question because, when we talk about the virtual thing, I'll get to there. I'll try to get to there organically as much as possible. But every physical entity has to have a virtual element of it in today's world in order to stay relevant, whether or not that's the main thing that we do. So a big part of my work with NTC is related to that. But if we go all the way back to the very first performance I saw, that kind of stuck with me for my life. from the National Trumpet Competition was I want to say 2009. The winning trumpet ensemble and the trumpet ensemble division that year, which was Juilliard, they did an arrangement of Festive Overture. And at the time, I was obviously a lot younger than I am now. We all were. 2009 was a while ago at this point. But I did not even realize, well, first of all, that trumpet ensembles were a thing that they could get together and perform. And this was right before I started college. But that trumpet ensembles would go to national competitions and perform at their pinnacle, and that this could be a thing. And to be fair, it was still fairly new, even at that time, the whole trumpet ensemble act. And I saw that happen, and I just became instantly inspired by what people were capable of doing on the instrument. And like I said previously, I first decided I wanted to major in music education. And I took the trumpet with me because it was my main instrument. And trumpet became a big, huge passion for me later. But obviously, watching the ensemble division also led me to watching performers in the solo division. And I was just taken aback by awe by what performers were able to do in that setting. So the National Trumpet Competition became a big part of my college career, just because I wanted to attend as many times as possible, and I just wanted to be able to be a part of that environment and sort of take in all of the great and wonderful things that was going on in our trumpet community. So we progressed through that, and I graduated. I'm doing my thing at, from a social media standpoint side of things, and because of my involvement over the years, I had the opportunity to meet a number of people, and through social media, individuals who maybe hadn't met me in person before had the opportunity to kind of get a bigger feel for what I was about and the things that were important to me. And of course, the Trumpet Multitracks came as an outgrowth and eventual growth out of my passion for a trumpet ensemble that had been built all those years ago. And so I had the opportunity at one point to judge the National Trumpet Competition preliminary division, and the first division I judged was the graduate school division. It was a couple of years ago, and it was a really great and positive experience, and I made it clear that I would love to be a part of it in the future. And the next time that they invited me, Bill also invited me to judge the on-site event. So of course I went there to do that. And one of the things that I hadn't realized through the pandemic, because in a lot of ways we were kind of in our own islands, like we've talked about before, but I knew that my career had continued to grow because I had continued to push things out there, but I didn't realize just how quickly my career had grown through social media, through the building of TMTC, through all these other things. And when I went to NTC, I realized there were people who were hunting me down and wanted to ask me questions about composing, about social media, about those types of things, which is super great. And to me was super humbling that people cared about my career, in that regard. And as I was able to, have those conversations with those individuals, what I started realizing really quickly was that there was a really big respect for how we could use social media to augment our career and to kickstart our career and to enhance our career as musicians. So Bill Stoneman came to me and asked me if I was interested in joining the board of directors. And obviously in the trumpet community, the networking and connections you do, like we talked about before, as long as you're continually putting yourself in a manner that you can be proud of, that you're okay with presenting to the world, people can find out a lot about you really quickly. And they knew that I was someone that they thought would be a great representation on the board for NTC. and that my specific knowledge with the social media side of things and the other online presence side of things was going to be very beneficial for the competition moving forward. So that's how that came about. I accepted the position on the board. It's been really great. There have been a number of individuals who have joined the board as others have retired and moved on to other things, focusing on their careers, et cetera. And it's just been a really big pleasure and a really great joy. And even in the off season, a lot of things that we've been doing, we set up a new website, and the website is cleaner and clearer and a lot easier to follow. And the information is up in a way that you can learn a lot more, a lot easier. And we've already started putting together guest artists and master classes, et cetera, that are more pertinent to what students of today and of tomorrow are going to want and need in order to be successful. But boy, has it just been a pleasure, being involved with NTC, because every time you go there, you start to see, and this is on the previous board of directors and the artists, et cetera, that have been invited there. The community is just such a warm and encouraging community. And there are times in the trumpet community where that's not the case. And it's always, because of whatever happens at top is going to trickle down to whatever community is associated with that. And so the individuals that are up there, Dr. Dennis Edelbrock, Dr. Bill Stoneman, et cetera, and the members of the board previously have really done a great job of setting up that wonderful community. And what I'll mention as an aside is that NTC, a lot of people don't know this, which is something we're trying to do better on in the future, but the events at NTC are free to attend. Especially if they're in your neck of the woods, you should absolutely be going and checking out to see what is going on there. It's an event that there's certainly enough value to pay plenty of money to go see. But if you're not competing, if you're just going there and you're spectating, all you need is to get yourself there.
Yeah, I've gone to a few NTCs, as a casual observer, and I've also gone and as a rep for different companies, and I've always had a great time. Always had a great time. The vibe there is phenomenal. Everybody's just kind of having a great time, and the things like NTC are a big inspiration for what this is. It's the hang. It's getting to talk to people that you share a very important passion with. And whether it be talking with a performer, talking with an educator, talking with a composer, there's some aspect of what we love about what we do that you can connect on, and then you can get into these deeper conversations to get to know people and maybe pick up some information. Some of the best lessons happen at the hang. So
that's really the best part of NTC is the hang. Yep.
And it's not always. I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that the best lessons or the most important or impactful lessons are rarely about technique or how to do something on the horn. It's about the life approach and the skills that you need to navigate a successful career. So and everybody at NTC has always been so willing to just sit and talk and just be real. And I do love that that's something that I do miss. The real time sitting there with a group of people and the energy, but we had to do what we had to do with the lockdown, but we'll happens next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing the impact that you make in the contributions that you bring to the table. And something that you said about that was interesting, that it's what do you think about it in terms of NTC, the ITGs, the established things, or we think about it in terms of our educational system? That we have sometimes, unfortunately, people that are not even teaching students for today. They're teaching what used to be. And you said about preparing young players for career today and for the future, there has to be this level of forward thinking. So from your perspective as someone who's been involved, who's involved with those traditional organizations that is in a higher educational background, you are doing all these kind of creative things. What do you see are kind of the sticking points of the way that we have been approaching, and what are the things that we need to really begin to consider to move ourselves into the future and with the best possible results?
Sure. So there's a lot of fundamental aspects, and what I want to say is, I mean, colleges and institutions, for the most part, are very good at training us to solidify those fundamental aspects. So fundamentals could mean fundamental technical skills. How do you produce a clear sound? How do you produce a full sound on the instrument? And how do you go about the process of refining that sound? But also some fundamental aspects could be, how do you interact with other musicians, with other potential students, with other potential employers? And those are all great things. The balance between those fundamental skills that we need, that are necessary for us not to get a job per se, and a lot of times we forget this in college. College prepares you to have a shot at getting a job. You don't get a job because you graduated college, right? It prepares you to apply. So those skills are really necessary, but also the skills that are particular and pertinent to whatever career you want to do. And just generally speaking, never closing the door. We make a lot of assumptions as musicians that, I have to give away this passion or this desire or whatever the case may be so that I can focus on my career. But at the end of the day, most of us do music because it is one of our biggest passions. I don't really see many people going into music school, especially not classical musicians or jazz musicians, because they're in it for the money. That's just not a thing. Most of us aren't rich, right? Most of us aren't making 7-figure incomes by playing our instrument. So the passion is there. We took that initial step going into college, that initial risk of saying, I'm going to follow my passion. But then for whatever reason, we then say, all right, now I'm going to close out all of my other passions, or I'm going to pigeonhole this passion into one tiny little niche. And the crazy thing is we can speak obviously about how things are ever changing in the future, but it hasn't even been true in the past that musicians have gotten to where they are by sticking to one individual thing. You don't have to look very far. Chris Martin marched drum corps before he was, playing professionally in an orchestral setting. Tom Hooten was in the Marine band, before he, played for LA. And obviously there are things that happened before then. And there are some elements that, maybe didn't even necessarily have to do with music that individuals did. There are teachers who, majored in anthropology in college, who worked for America Online, for the dial-up internet, right? And for things like that. And all of those experiences, every experience you have helps you to build your career in the future. And if something's your passion, it's not something that you should throw away. So I'll give an example for myself. I probably would be a lot further. Well, I definitely would be a lot further in social media if I got rid of that assumption in my mind when I was at VCU, that I had always had a passion for YouTube, and Instagram came up and I wanted to learn all those things about that. And I was very big. I spent a lot of time on my free time, when I wasn't practicing, when I wasn't doing my homework, the 1 hour of free time a year that you get as a music major, right? I would spend that time and I would sort of engross myself in social media. And I would always say to myself, oh yeah, it'd be really cool to do this someday. But, I'm pursuing a music career. So, I'll just have to put it on the back burner. If I had incorporated it into my life at that age and allowed that time to grow, there'd be some incredible things that would be possible for me today. And they still will be possible in the future. Now that I've at some point, I decided, well, okay, this is too much of a passion to let go. Let's incorporate it into my career. But as we go through that process as musicians, and especially through academia, I think we just sometimes get into that trap of thinking, oh, I have to focus on one specific and tiny aspect of things. So to kind of go back to the point, part of the original question you asked, which was how do we stay relevant? And this sounds blunt, but there are things happening in the world around us. The world is changing, and we're not in our own kind of bubble. We see these things every day. The step is saying, how does this relate to what I'm doing as a career? And maybe you want to be a professional orchestral trumpet player. Maybe you can still do that. But the reality is, there are plenty other things that you can do. And if there's something that you enjoy that you should do, that you should, go through that process of learning and figuring out how to do, that will be as much of a benefit, if not even greater of a benefit to you in your career. If orchestras were to shut down all at the same time, people like Tom Hooten would be fine. People like Chris Martin would be fine. Like Mike Sachs, et cetera, they'd be fine because they didn't stick themselves to one individual part of that career. They can go out and do other careers. They can teach, they can tour. Some of them will actually find their way onto social media and do some pretty good things themselves, which is really cool, but just teaching to the skills that we need to be functioning humans today, and then how do we translate that into our business? So I think it's really important. And you're right. You insinuated, and some institutions we're just teaching people to do one thing, and it might be one thing that isn't nearly as big or popular as it was, as it may have been 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I don't know. I just think it's a shame. I think that if you're going to make an investment of tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars in your career, that would you not want something that is relevant and pertinent to today? So the fundamental aspects of making a good sound, but then maybe you want to be a recording artist and for a live orchestra, for a movie, for a film, right? Well, okay, who are the individuals that are in that craft? What are the things that they do? How have they built their skills? And how is the film industry moving today in a way that you can kind of position yourself that way? And everything from regarding how you continue to refine your sound to how you network and everything in between is going to be an important element of that goal. Some schools do that really well.
Yeah. Well, and it's up to the people that are in your position right now, the current educators, and to the next generation of educators. So if you're someone who's listening to this podcast and you're in high school, you're in college, and you're getting ready to start your career, and education is your passion. I think the key is that you have to keep those passions alive. A big thing for me has always been, as a teacher, I want to be the kind of teacher that I never had. I want to think about all the things that, I've learned over the years, and like, wow, man, if I only had someone who considered these things or approached things from this way, I would probably be a lot further on. So I try to become that person, and stay on top of things too. And I think one of the important things, that word passion, because in my life, I've done so many different things. And for years, I always thought that I was like, man, I'm wasting time because, I've gone from this career to this career to this career because I've had so many different careers in my life. But now I'm at a point where I can look back and go, oh, well, these were all just different expressions of my passions. And so while they may not have been in the same career field, I was still doing the same thing. And now I'm at a point in my life where now that I understand it, I can bring it all together. And I think that if we can, if you're 20 some years old and you can figure that out, or you have somebody that can help mentor you to understand that if this is something that's really that important to you, if social media is that important to you, and if music is that important to you, and if something else is that important to you, figure out where those things overlap. If you take them like a Venn diagram, find out where they overlap, because that then is the place where you're going to have the biggest impact you're going to have the most joy and probably the potential of having the most successful career, because career is not always, about how much you make. It's about how much you're able to do. So, I really like what you said about that, about, staying with those passions. So I could go way down a rabbit hole on that, but
Yeah.
but one of your other passions, so we'll use that as our springboard for this, is composition. So you are currently teaching theory at VCU. So there's definitely that passion for the actual process of writing and understanding music, and the technical side of it, other than just the production through the instrument, but the theoretical concepts of what makes music. And so from your perspective, obviously you're going to be a little bit prejudiced on this, but what is the role of music theory, of understanding music theory, in terms of improving your skills as a performer? And then also we'll talk about like your compositions and how that has become a natural add on to all the other things that you've been doing in your life.
Sure. So music theory is a study of music, and the goal, the primary goal and the most important goal. And you're right, I'm very opinionated about this, because oftentimes we kind of turn this thing on its head. But the goal for music theory is to get us to understand why music works the way that it does. So a lot of times, we introduce these things like, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. Check out this proper voice leading, check out this and that and the other. These things exist because we saw music that worked really great in the past, and we noticed patterns, and we assigned labels to those patterns. And we said, oh, if we apply these patterns on purpose in the future to other elements, we can kind of emulate some of those great things that were happening from our composers of the past. And obviously, like we've been talking about in this interview, the world continues to grow and develop and change. So ideally, what we want to ask ourselves, especially when we use music theory from a compositional standpoint, is how do I use the basic fundamental elements that make music what it is to help progress the overall community and style of music for the future. And so a lot of times in music theory, we kind of get into this, well, there are all these rules and I have to make sure that I follow all these rules. Really, at the end of the day, you're being taught the rules so that you can understand when and how and why to break them. At the end of the day, we say, oh, you have to do such and such. Well, also, what we really should be adding is you have to do this unless there's a specific reason you wouldn't do it. So, for example, if you have jarring voice leading, but there's no reason for it, then it kind of takes the listener out of what they might expect to hear in music. There's sometimes where you're writing a piece of music where you do want to take the listener out of that experience. And so you would intentionally use, heavy dissonance or jarring voice leading or something of that sort in order to make that happen. At the end of the day, the role of music theory is to kind of teach us how music works, how that genuine emotional connection is created and how it can be affected, so that then you can use that to your advantage as a performer to understand why certain things sound the way that they do and what you can do to help that and to make it your own. And of course, as a composer, what you can do to tell your story and to convey those emotions using the technical skills that the behaviors of music and how we interact with it. So that's the goal of theory. And if we approach it that way, it can bring us really a lot of really great success in our careers in the future, especially for those who are composers. If we are asking ourselves, why aren't people listening to our music? You keep writing music and trying to put it in front of people, and it's, maybe people like it to a modest extent, but you really want to make that next hit, right? How do I do that? How do I make something that everyone's going to love and that everyone's going to enjoy? Well, the answers are right in front of us. We just have to figure out how to make it our own. So using music theory to do that is going to be, it's something that will help us, and it's to our benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about the theory, talking about composition, and improvisation to me is it's a spontaneous composition. So you're not putting it down on the paper, you're just putting it out in the ether. But I think that it's so funny because so many people, you'll find people that they're really tremendous players, and then you say, well, can you, hey, can you improvise? And like, well, no, I can't improvise. Or have you ever written? Well, no, I can't write. I'm like, what do you mean? You can do that. It may not be great, but you can do it. And I think that it's one of those skills that can only, it gets better like anything else. It gets better the more you do it. And I think even if you don't have any desire to become a jazz soloist or to become a published composer, that the process of writing and arranging and improvising and studying the practical application of the theory, it only will make you a better player, because you then understand better what the composer had in mind. You'll understand why those note choices are there. You'll understand how the voice leading works. You'll understand then how to create the emotion that you want through your music, whether it's through dissonance or through the resolution, or however you do it from the theoretical concept. It just amazes me that people feel like that's something that's beyond their capability. So as a teacher, how do you help people navigate that? How do you help them to understand that these are just part of the natural process?
Sure. We haven't talked much about pedagogy. I think you have plenty of trumpet players who can talk about pedagogy, but one thing that I do want to share is that I kind of view the world. I don't really believe that there's anything that is quote unquote difficult. I believe it's a matter of how many steps do you have to take in order to achieve your goal. And so the reality is, nobody, at least nobody that I know, came out of the room playing the trumpet professionally. That's not a thing. You practice and you work at it over time. And when we say time, we mean years and years and years and thousands of hours. And I think oftentimes as musicians, we forget. Most of us, when we first started as musicians, we were not professionals, we were amateurs. And we played the instrument because we enjoyed it, or maybe because our parents made us, or whatever the case may be. And as you got older, hopefully it became your own, especially if you're doing it for a career. But we didn't have the trained ears, the mature perspective that we did when we first started. So all of those things that were happening, us, making terrible sounds and not knowing how to put down the right fingering, and all of those things, we were just by nature less critical of ourselves when you first learn a skill in the craft. But then when you add something to it, so for example, the music education majors always go through and they take methods and technique in other instruments. You pick up a violin for the first time and you want to go home and cry for the entire night. You're like, man, I sound so terrible at this instrument. And it's not something that you can learn overnight. Had you learned it when you were a child, you would have been super excited that you got a sound out of it. And as you continue to progress as a musician, you would continue to progress with that understanding of how to make a great sound, which would also push you that way. Since you're already there, since you're already at that understanding, as an experienced musician picking up a new instrument or a new skill, we kind of have that goal to put ourselves up to the standard that we do with our main instrument. But it's just not a fair thing to do. The only way to get better at what you're doing is to be okay with the fact that you're not going to be great at the very beginning, and to engage yourself in that journey towards getting better. I will say that, and many people, there are certain things in our world that people just think you have to be born with, like you have to be born with high notes. You have to be born with specific, the gap in your teeth and all these crazy things people say, right? And there's a lot of instances with composing that it's very similar. People will think you just, you were born, hearing symphonies in your head. No, it's not the case at all. You listened to music and you write stuff down because you thought it sounded cool. And then you continued to build and grow upon that passion, either inadvertently as you were growing up, through a childhood, or you did it intentionally. And still to this day, that's how I learned skills. I put a skill in front of me. I realized that I'm terrible at it, but I enjoy it. If I enjoy it, I'm going to continue moving forward. Okay, this is terrible. Why is it terrible? What are the steps I can take to make it better? And at the end of the day, you can get to the top of any staircase the same way as you would get to the top of any other staircase. And that's by taking one step at a time. And so as a musician, absolutely anything that you do in the music field is going to make you better in other forms of the music field. The better I am as a teacher, the better I will be as a composer. The better I am as a performer, the better I will be as a composer, and vice versa. And so building those skills is going to be incredibly helpful for you to do. And in my mind, necessary, right? Because as I continue to learn how to improv, it helps me to understand how to become a better teacher as well, And if I'm not good at any one of those things, then the reality is all I need to do is say, what are the steps that I need to take to achieve those goals? Maybe I need to train my ear better. Maybe my aural skills professor knew what they were talking about. Maybe I need to practice those intervals. Maybe I need to do those things, or maybe I need to have a better understanding of my way around a keyboard, or whatever the case may be, whatever that context is. But if you say to yourself, I'm not good at this because I haven't taken those steps yet. I want to be good at it. Let's take the steps. Then you start to open the world of possibility, and you realize there's little in the music career that you can't do. And the only limitation is your time. And so we want to make sure that we're doing things, spending our time doing the things that we are passionate about, and not the things that we feel like we have to do out of necessity, which, hopefully, as a professional musician, the fundamental aspects of getting better at what you do is something that you're passionate about. And so taking that journey and going forward is something that'll be really important. I would lump in composition with that. I would lump in education with that. I would lump in anything that is going to make you a better overall musician with that. Because at the end of the day, if you're only focusing on one skill, you become expendable and replaceable. And as musicians, that's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, as a composer, I know you just published a new piece, and you've also been involved with Diversify the Stand and some other organizations doing that. So obviously, composition is a critical part of your musical expression. So,
yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about your newest compositional projects?
Sure. Yeah. So I know at the time that this interview is airing, we will have completed Sonata for Heroes, the piece, as well as closed the consortium. And a few weeks afterwards, Dr. Jason Bergman at the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University is giving his world premiere. That's going to be November 11th. So we'll undoubtedly have announcements coming out about that. That piece, and then it's cool. There's a lot of what we've been talking about today kind of ties into the idea and premise behind the piece. The idea of the composition is to help us to realize as musicians that the heroes that we've seen in the past that have inspired us to do what we want to do today. We are going to be the ones who become those heroes for the next generation. And it's really important in our world to kind of notice, what happens when you build your craft, what happens when you follow your passion and you go out and you build those careers, you create those careers, and you join those careers that exist today. You are, making a really great career and an enjoyable life for yourself, but you're also being a really big, touching, and positive impact to the others who are looking to be in your position in the future. So this sonata that will be out and available for those consortium members to perform over the next bit it really kind of plays on that premise. And I use lots of themes that have to do with, when you listen to them, you would think superhero soundtrack, you would think film score, you would think those types of things. And it's a little bit of that, what we were talking about with our conversation with TMTC. This applies as well, just kind of bridging the gap between the mainstream music community, those who enjoy, the popular culture music and the film scores and that type of thing, and classically trained musicians and jazz trained musicians, et cetera, and the things that we do in school, and kind of taking elements from both of those and bridging them together so that individuals who maybe never had any experience with classically trained musicians or going to recitals like that of the sort could find parts of the music that they enjoy, could find parts of the performances that they enjoy, that they understand, that they can relate to. The piece has already become one of my favorites that I've written. It's one of those things, though. I understand this is just a part of my career, and it means that I'm growing, and I've had this conversation with many people. Sometimes you write a piece of music similar to the way you would perform. And if it's recorded, you go back and you listen to it, in the future, and you'd be like, man, I can do better than that now. And so I'm prepared for that. I know that's going to come. But I've been really excited to have this opportunity. And in the day that we're doing this recording right now, we have 26 people who have joined the consortium. The consortium is essentially a group commission. It's very similar to a micro commission, but there's one individual typically who leads that commission from a performance standpoint, who has the rights to the world premiere, et cetera. And for this, that individual is Dr. Jason Bergman, and he's performing that. He'll be the first performer to do that piece. And then there are a couple performances already lined up in the future for the piece as well. So it's going to be really great and exciting. And then any individual who wants to join the consortium, purchases at a buy-in price that is determined by, in some cases, the composer, in some cases, the performer, the consortium leader, and it's usually some sort of combination of the two. And so we've had various professionals and students from across the country join in and say we're excited for this, and it's going to be really great. So, all I have to do is make sure that the piece is a piece that everyone enjoys, and we've got some really great and memorable experiences going on there. One of the things I didn't realize as a composer was just how much in demand great music of recent time is. And people desire the new music, and they desire the new music that is easily marketable, that people can enjoy no matter what their level of experience is, and that people can perform no matter what their level of experience is. It's a part of bridging that gap between our larger community and the smaller niche community.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, and that seems to be a theme of what we've been talking about today is the concept of bridging the gap. And I think there's always a place for new music and new voices in music. And your work with Diversify the Stand, I've talked with Ashley and Carrie about that in the past as well. That there are those of us who are part of communities that have typically not gotten the love or the press or the PR that others do, and it's nice to be able to have an outlet for composers of groups that have not been given the respect and the presence that is deserving of people. So I just really appreciate your work and that new trumpet literature is always good, and taking the new concepts and bridging the gap. I think that's such a cool thing to do. So do you have any other compositions cooking around in your head right now that you might be hoping to produce here in the next year or two?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of solo commissions with some individuals, but the next consortium is going to be a piece for brass quintet. I have yet to write an original piece for brass quintet, and there aren't too many details parsed out right now. But my idea for that is essentially to write a single movement, a high velocity style piece, and to have people be able to join in. And one of the things with as I've been going through the process of building my career as a composer, and more so, I've mentioned the term business. I really do view my career as a business because it helps me to be able to understand what my colleagues want, what my audience wants, and how I can best serve them. But there is a lot of desire for new brass quintet music out there as well, and certainly I love the ensemble in general. So when I put out the consortium for solo trumpet and piano, I put it out in mind that I was also going to put out a consortium later for brass quintet. And the members who ended up joining this consortium for trumpet and piano are actually going to get a discount on the buy-in if they also want to join in for the brass quintet. So I'm working on that. I've got a commission for a solo piece for horn and piano, and I've got a couple of other commissions and on the back burner as well. So music music composition is a really big part of my career, especially considering it's something I never majored in. It just became this really big passion. Like I said, the more I wrote music, the better it made me as an educator and as a performer, and vice versa. So I realized that it was something that I never needed to sacrifice in order to focus on the other things. And because of that, it's become a really big and enjoyable part of my career. So I'm always writing new music. There will be some pieces in maybe a little bit further in the future. I'm going to be expanding my wind band literature and things like that. So yeah, but the next thing, we can expect a brass quintet next. So be prepared for that.
All right. Well, and if you want to keep tabs on what's going on with Marcus, just make sure you visit his website. The links are definitely in the show notes for that. And if you want to commission him to do a work for you, well, I'm sure we can work something out here. So
yeah, be happy to.
All right. It's all good. All right. Well, we need to get to a couple of our standard segments here before we can wrap up today. And we're going to start with our first one, which is called Sound Off. It's brought to us by Michael Barkley of Barkley Microphones. And it's about sound concepts. So let's just get your thoughts on and let's maybe take it from this this compositional standpoint. Your view as a composer of how you view sound and its place in the music, and what maybe people can do to get the appropriate sound for a piece that you are composing.
Sure. So the biggest thing is to understand how sound affects us as human beings. And music is a natural part of the world. We can't get a single day without listening to music and without listening to noises and sounds in various ways that affect us in certain manners. And so if we're approaching this from a composer standpoint, understanding what memory do you want your audience to create, and how do you want them to feel about that memory through that process? And then as a composer, what can you do to bring out that part of the process? Now, a lot of that comes intuitive to us. When you think to yourself, say you wanted a piece that instilled inspiration and hope in a listener, there's a very organic way you can go about that, which is reflecting on yourself. Well, what helped you to instill hope and inspiration when you listen to music, and how can you emulate those aspects of what you're doing? We can also get super technical into it as well. We obviously talked about music theory and aural skills, et cetera, through this interview. And you can say to yourself, okay, what type of modes, what type of modal mixtures, what type of themes do we see in music that brings about this feeling? For example, if I raise the fourth in the major scale, that's an example of something that raises a feeling of hope and inspiration when you listen to music like that. One example of many ways that you can kind of go about that. But then the biggest thing is just, are you writing music in such a way that allows the performer to sound great while they do whatever that piece is. So yes, writing music that is challenging, that is enjoyable to listen to and perform, etc. But are you going to be able to have a piece put in front of someone that no matter who the performer is, the audience is going to be able to feel whatever it is that you want them to feel. So sound really comes from that emotional connection that you have with the part of human nature. We would not be humans without the presence of music. And so using that to our advantage will be very helpful.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that. That's some great gems in there. All right. Our next segment is called Geared Up. Geared Up is brought to us by Venture Mouthpieces. Venture, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code TrumpetGurus21 to get 10% off your order. And this is about gear. I mean, come on, we're gearheads. Trumpet players are all gearheads. So
trumpet players, gearheads. I don't know any of those. No.
What are you talking about? You know, Cookie. So, what are your thoughts on gear? The role of gear in in producing music, and just I'll let you roll with that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, first I want to start about specifically trumpet gear, right? Because I think that's the relevant side of things. And at the end of the day, gear exists to help you accomplish whatever goal you're looking to accomplish. It is there to enhance your ability to do something, not to serve as the reason that you're able to do something, right? At the end of the day, the skills that you build are going to help you to accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. So for example, certain metals create certain sounds. If you have a brass instrument, if you have a gold-plated instrument versus a silver-plated instrument, they're going to have different sounds. One's going to be brighter. One's going to be, generally speaking, smoother. Different manufacturers will have different areas. Different mouthpieces will help you to, expand certain areas of your playing. At the end of the day, your gear is not going to be responsible for you accomplishing those goals, but it can help you to achieve those goals. So knowing what it is that you want to do as a musician, in this case, as a trumpet player, is going to be the first step. And then you can pick out the gear to help you do that. So a big example of that might be, for example, if we take it all the way to beginning band, and you say you want your trumpet players to have a warm sound. Well, awesome. Do some research on what type of instruments, manufacturers, what mouthpieces, etc., that you would use that would allow your musicians to be able to do that. Maybe you're not choosing a mouthpiece with a shallow cup if you want your trumpets to be able to blend with the rest of the ensemble, for example. So equipment takes a really big part in helping us to achieve those goals. First, we need to know what those goals are, and we need to actively define those goals.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I am absolutely with you on that. All right. We have one final segment, and this is the Robinson's Remedy Rapid Fire Round. This is brought to us by Robinson's Remedy, rapid relief for your sore and tired chops. Bunch of questions bouncing all over the place just to get your brain all twisted up. So are you ready for a little bit?
No, let's do it anyway.
Okay. All right, this is one of my passions. I like asking these kind of questions. All right, so let's go ahead and start. First question for you. Who is the biggest influence in your life that is not a trumpet player?
My uncle. My uncle is a professional basketball coach. Actually, he's a college basketball coach now. He's had some experience, in the professional realm of things. He is the coach at University of Dayton right now. He coaches Dayton Flyers, and there was one quote that he was in a press conference at one point, not for Dayton, but for a previous team that he taught. There was a star player who got involved in some things that were not becoming of the image of an upstanding human being. And they were in the postseason. And, they knew that they were not going to do very well in the postseason without him. It did not stop him from disciplining his team in a way that was necessary for those who were involved. And his quote when he was asked about that, because people were saying, oh, well, you had a really great chance in postseason. And he said that that character is a choice, and talent is a gift. And he actually switched it around. I think talent is a gift, character is a choice. Was the quote that he gave, and what he wanted to emphasize was, at the end of the day, yes, you can build your skills to a point. Yes, you can be talented at a craft. Yes, you can do these things. It can have a really big impact. But the most important thing is what you choose to do and how you choose to carry yourself.
Well, he's definitely sounds like an inspirational dude. All right. Next question. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book is the Arbenz book because, no, I'm kidding. This is a funny question. This is something that I might actually tick some people off by this answer. I do not read books very commonly in my career. What I do is listen to podcasts, and there is the podcast that is hosted by Chris Do from the Future. He's a business entrepreneurial artist, and he brings world-class individuals to his podcast to give interviews, and they basically talk about how the business world is growing and changing and how we can relate to it as artists. I love that type of thing. I love listening to how we can take an entrepreneurial approach to what we do. And again, like we've been talking about before, increasing our relevance as musicians.
Okay, cool. Next question. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
The worst movie I've ever seen. This might also take some people off. As a child, I watched the Lion King, and I enjoyed watching it for the most part. I will tell you, I was scarred for life when I saw the uncle, kill his brother and blame the nephew and have the nephew live an entire life of a lie. And I remember as a child, I don't know, I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old or something like that. When I first saw The Lion King, I thought to myself, there's no way that people in the world could ever do that. And I was kind of scarred, like, well, what if people like that exist? And I lived a big part of my life in fear. Like what if there are people who have lived that life? And so, I know a lot of people don't. I mean, for me, sometimes I'll take certain things that I'll notice and I'll zero in on certain aspects of that. And for whatever reason, as a child, that was one of those things I zeroed into. Like, no way an uncle would do that ever. And I was just kind of mortified for my entire life. So, thank you, Disney.
All right, next question. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
A harp player. I would absolutely be in music. And I think harp is the most beautiful instrument of all time, frankly. I think that especially the sonorities that you get from there that aren't easily possible on the trumpet, and the type of music that allows, the type of comfort that it brings to individuals who listen to that type of music. It's just a really great and profound thing. If I had to take it outside of music, it would be some aspect of content creation, of social media, which is what we're growing towards anyway. So it's something that, I just love the idea of being able to share information, share experiences, and create positivity in the world on a platform that doesn't have the bounds of location.
Okay, great. What's your favorite drink?
My favorite drink is Sprite. I can't really tell you why. As a child, I just kind of grew up on it, and it's one of those things. I know a lot of people have certain. Like, oh, they don't eat something or they don't drink something for their health or whatever. And I really have never drank, caffeinated sodas. And people ask me, oh, why did you make that decision? Like, well, I don't really have a reason for it. I just really like the way that non-caffeinated soda tastes. And so things that, I kind of grew up on Sprite, and then like anything with caffeine tastes a little thicker to me. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that. No, I don't want the thickness. I want the, I just want the taste of the carbonated water and the, the flavors that come from that. So yeah, nice. Sprite is my favorite.
Okay. You'd have a dinner party and invite any 3 living people. Who would you want to have there?
That's a tough one, because there's a big part of me that wants to invite people that I've met in the past. But then at the same time, there's people that I've never met before, right? That I just would really want to talk to and kind of, in some ways, in some cases, pick their brains, but also just get to know them as people. I would absolutely, without a doubt, I would invite John Williams to dinner. I want to know what was going through his mind when he was 30, and when he entered into film scoring and started his career. And what did he maybe predict or see out of his career at that age? And how and when and why did it change? And how did he grow and adjust to that? I just have so much admiration for what he does. And we talk about living composers and accessibility. I mean, that's it. The music that he has written will be here for centuries. People will continue to listen to that music. John Williams is one. I would cross into the YouTube world. There's an individual younger than I am who just recently crossed 100 million subscribers on YouTube. His name is Jimmy Donaldson. Most people know him as Mr. Beast. And he is known for making, extreme styles of videos, like literally burying himself alive for 24 hours and making a video on it and things like that. But then he's also known, oftentimes his big challenges will involve subscribers of his and other, people like that. And he will, oftentimes there'll be a lot of money involved in that. He'll give really large prizes. So he started out by giving, he had a brand deal when he had about 1 million subscribers, and he gave, he gave basically all that brand deal money to a homeless person. It was $10,000 and kind of helped that person get started on his life. And then, that video did really well. It blew up. His channel was monetized, so he made money from ad revenue. Then he also made money from his next sponsorship deal. And then he took both of those revenues and started giving that out in his next videos. I just want to talk to him about YouTube. I want to know how he was able to really develop the formula that he develops, because he is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing YouTuber today. And the stuff that he creates, if Mr. Beast gets a video that has 20 million views on it, it's considered a flop on his channel. I mean, that's considered like, man, that video didn't do well. More like 40 million to 200 million is what you expect from the type of things that he does. The third person, I honestly, I don't know. I'd have to think about it for a while. There's just, the thing is, there's just so many people that I want to meet in general. And I think what I would maybe say is I probably would want to meet Selena Ott. If we're bringing people to dinner, there are people, and I spend a lot of times, watching individuals who have been able to do great things with their passion at those younger ages and what they do as they continue to build and grow. Selena Ott, of course, is a phenomenal trumpet player. If you were to think about, a cross between Phil Smith and Håkan Hardberger, that's the type of sound she's making, like in her 20s, and it's crazy. It's really, and it's very easy to see her passion for it as well. And that's one of the cool things as well. Sometimes we get so into the technique of refining our craft that we start to, the human element and the passion side of things kind of starts to make way for some of the more technical prowess and aspects of things. But when you hear Selena play, you can clearly hear her broad sense of a mature musical approach and just her overall passion. So I would mostly want to ask her what changed about her career when she had the honor of first getting first place on an international stage, because she became very visible very quickly. And how did she maybe deal with that change in her career?
Okay, good. You can have 3 people from history. Who do you want to have?
It's a good question. I absolutely want to. I'm going to go with the typical trumpet response and say I really want to meet Maurice Andre. I just, I want to know everything about what he did, and a lot of things I want to know how these people saw themselves, because oftentimes in the world, we don't ever see ourselves as, oh, I'm a legend in my craft, and most people really don't, and they have their own heroes. I want to know what inspired him to do what he did. I want to sit in a practice room with him, and kind of like get to know what are the types of things that he went through in order to get to where he got. So absolutely, Maurice Andre. Let's see. This is by far the question I'm the least prepared for. I feel as though I would really want to meet one of the founders of our country, like somebody like a George Washington or a Thomas Jefferson, and just kind of get a feeling for. And the reason I say that, it's these individuals are. I mean, the colonies obviously were colonies that embraced change. They didn't like where they were in life. And they put themselves in an environment where they could sort of be the masters of their own fate, and obviously went through a great deal of challenges in order to do that. I want to know, when you commit to something like that, and you make that sacrifice of basically everything that you've ever known, right? How are they able to go about creating such a government that obviously has its flaws, because we're human and we all have flaws, but how are they able to build the basis behind something that has existed over all of these years and, hasn't been overthrown or anything like that. So I would definitely want to meet one of those individuals. I don't really have a third person.
Yeah.
I can try to think of one. Okay. You can make fun of me. You can say I failed this question.
Okay, all right. Lacquer plated or raw?
Lacquer plated.
All right.
Yeah. I won't explain that one. It's just my preference.
All right. What's your favorite quote?
By Joey Tartell. Someone's going to be the best in the world at something, so why can't it be you?
Okay. What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is that I will have gotten distracted in my career in a manner that I have failed to serve my community in the way that I originally wanted to. And I'm able to make opportunities available to individuals for whom it's not normally accessible. And that, I got distracted in the art of bridging that gap in order to, maybe take care of other, things that I felt like I had to do in life, giving up my passion for music to make a living or whatever the case may be. My fear is that part of my career will leave me forever, and that I won't be able to achieve those dreams I had as a child.
All right. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
I feel like music is the greatest superpower. You can play music and you can unite literal, communities together, entire countries. You can connect people across countries. I don't know. It's tough to say. I would say, if I had to be granted a conventional superpower, I would really love teleportation, for the same reason that I really love social media. Is because at any point I want to be able to go into an environment and learn what makes that environment such a great environment to be in. I would want to, go across seas, and I'd want to see the London Philharmonic do a performance, without having to buy a plane ticket to go do that. I'd want to be able to, it's like, well, I can only go to ITG for one day. Oh, that's fine. Never mind the fact that you have to buy a plane ticket and get a place to stay and do all those things, and like over $1,000. No, none of that. Just I'm here today and I'm there in an hour, right? And
there you go.
Get to see that, and then I'm back.
I'm there with you. All right. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most overrated?
what aspect of the trumpet playing do I feel is the most overrated? High range.
All right.
I'll say actually specifically the way that we approach high range, because there's just far too many trumpet players who will negate the fundamental aspects of playing the instrument and what makes us sound good in order to play the high notes. So definitely overrated.
Okay. What do you think is the most underrated?
Sound, as crazy as it is. I know obviously as teachers, we focus on sound and tone quality, et cetera. But the sound is the element of your identity as a musician. And a lot of times we throw it away because we want to get a gig, I got to sound a specific way. But how do you sound you, right? How do you sound your own identical, not identical, but your own genuine, human art of expression? That's the part of sound that I think is underrated. We don't spend enough attention becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Great. All right, you can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Stop worrying about whether or not you're going to make it. Get rid of that pesky imposter syndrome. Give yourself permission to follow your dreams.
All right. And what advice would you give yourself about life?
Life is unpredictable, and we can never predict what happens even tomorrow. And so be adaptable. Don't be apologetic about changing course if and when you need to or want to. And just, live your life to the fullest according to the environment and situations that you're enjoying today.
Awesome. Final question for you, Marcus. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be, I want people to know me as an individual who worked tirelessly in bridging the gap between classically trained musicians and mainstream culture, that people realize that they actually love classical music, and what they maybe thought that they knew about classical music and why they thought they could never kind of get into it. They realized was just a preconceived notion that ultimately isn't true, that, everyone can enjoy music and that everyone loves music, whether they know about it or not. So that's my goal. That's what I want my legacy to be.
Awesome. All right. Well, you're certainly working towards that, and you're young and you've got time. But I know that every day, you do the best you can and just keep moving on. So thanks, man, for hanging with me. This has been really great. And as I said earlier, links are in the show notes for Marcus's website. You can check out what he's doing in terms of his compositions, and also, keep tab of things that are going on with NTC and with the Multitrack competition. Look for season 3 to be dropping at some point. We'll hopefully have a live announcement or something for that. But thanks, man. This is very inspirational. I really appreciate it and wish you the best of luck in everything you do. And thank you for joining us today. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, follow us on social media. Follow Marcus on social media too. And if you have an idea for a future hang, please let me know. And hopefully we can make it happen. So until next time, folks, peace and slide grease. We out.
For hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.